today we were kind of tasked with talking about some soybean cropping systems. And we kind of wanted to review a little bit about some of the histories that we had with some different cropping systems that we've all used or are using or going to be using in the future. So to begin with, there's any kind of genetically modified cropping system. There's basically three that are available. There's one that's not approved yet. Hopefully Dow will get their Enlist program available and get EPA to let them use it. But at this moment, it's just not approved yet. But we've got Roundup, Roundup 2s, Roundup 1s, Liberty Link, and the Extend system that came available in 2016. So we'll kind of go through some of the label requirements that you really have to follow and use, and talk about the history of how things have evolved from the first genetically modified system to what is currently available. We're going to talk about some of the spraying requirements for each cropping system and the label requirements for cleanup. And I think that's one of the really important steps that we need to take a look at, because these sprayers are very complex, and there's nooks and crannies in all these booms, and if you don't get them cleaned out properly, you're going to have carryover issues, you're going to have problems in your systems. Finally, Chris is going to talk about some tools and some components that Smith Implements offers that will help make all those systems easier to use and to make your operation work a little smoother. So we're going to first talk about Roundup. Back in 1994, it came about, and it was a pretty easy system. When that system came out, we had a bunch of different chemicals that we had to worry about as far as application and rates, and it was pretty complex. Roundup system came out, it's cut and dry, pretty easy to do. The current label, we can put it on aerially or on ground. It's very universal. The application rate, as far as gallonage goes, it's got a broad spectrum. You go from 3 to 40 gallons of water per acre. So there's not very restrictive. Roundup itself was a wonderful tool, but from 94 to current, we've abused the system. And now all of a sudden, Mother Nature, she's found a way around it. And so we've had to add different things to make Roundup viable. With that, the label itself says, as weed density increase the spray volume to the upper end of the range to ensure complete coverage. It doesn't really talk about your specific amounts that you can put on, or it's very broad. So to this day, the new chemistry that's coming out is becoming more and more specific on how you have to handle it. And then finally, talking about nozzles with Roundup. The label clearly says just to avoid a fine mist. That's it. Best results, use a flat fan nozzle. Not a specific nozzle, just a flat fan. There's no specifics in it. So again, it's nothing that we can use anything we want, but there's no specifics. And then we'll talk about cleaning up after Roundup. And to this day, it's very easy. You use your herbicide, again, the following day, all you do, water. There's no tank adjuvants, there's no rinse-ates. As long as you flush it out, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, but there's an in-depth cleaning system that they use, or a process. Everybody's kind of done it or seen it, but water's the only adjuvant that you need. If you're switching from a crop or herbicide, follow the effective sprayer clean out. So we'll go through that just fairly quickly. While in the field, spray tank until it's empty, drain and flush booms, ends, remove any hardened herbicide solutions. So it doesn't say time-wise how long you should do it. It just says that you need to flush and drain them. You can fill the tank with some water, agitate, spray the solution for 5 minutes right there. And then power wash residue from the tank walls. 100 liters of water to the tank cleaning agent, and that's not necessarily a requirement, but you can use those. And circulate your cleaning solution for 15 minutes, sprayer long enough to fill lines and booms, then dispose of your rinsate. So again, it's very straightforward, but again, it's a broad guideline. Then finally, again, repeat system once more with plain water. Let's talk about Liberty and that system. It came along in 2009. Anybody use Liberty? No, a few. You know, the options on Liberty are again, it's different chemistry that we weren't used to. It got away from the Roundup a little bit. But again, Liberty, when you read the label, it comes and it gives you a lot more restrictions on your actual application and how you use it. Again, but you can use it aerially or ground. Now, here it talks about applying early when weeds are small with direct rates from the reach rate table. So that talks about exactly smaller weeds. In Roundup, it didn't talk about it. It said you needed to just increase your rate when crop densities incurred, but now they're wanting you to specifically get smaller weeds. And here we are talking about nozzles and pressure. Again, they want a medium to coarse spray nozzle. Right from the label, you have to have medium to coarse, not just a flat fan, but they don't specifically say a specific nozzle. And then with 280 SL, there's a minimum of 15 gallons of water per acre. So again, they've given you a specific gallonage. It's not such a broad range, so it really restricts you again for your applications on how you want to use it. And now with ground speed, no more than 15 miles an hour to obtain the proper adequate coverage. So again, you can't cover the acres that you would with another Roundup system because you've got to stay within that 15 miles an hour. And here they are talking about wind speeds between 2 to 10 miles per hour. Do not apply when gusts or conditions are favor movement of spray particles. So, and you notice it is not 0, it's 2. So no wind is worse than having some wind, if you could get that inversion with this particular chemical. So again, the label, it's very, very poignant to what they need and the label requirements. So it's becoming more and more restrictive. And now they've talked about do not use a flood jet nozzle, controlled droplet application equipment, or an air-assisted equipment. So now all these air induction nozzles that have come and become very popular, we're using those. The air induction nozzles that we sell, there's a good chart that they handed out with you today. And some of the ones that Smith's offers, they've got a good low drift air. And the Guardian Twin Air is one of their newer tips. It does a very nice job and gives a good droplet size. And again, the ultra low drift is one that, again, that we sell and service. But it's a good reference if you're looking for a tip, and it gives you kind of what you're trying to spray. It's a good reference. So let's talk about clean out a little bit with Liberty. Have we had any troubles with any clean outs and spray carry over from crop to crop, non-Liberty? Anybody? It happens, you know, and what happens is if you don't get your sprayers cleaned out well, and you'll get some gunk and some sludge in the end of these booms. Chris will talk a little bit here in a little while about the clean outs and how handy those are now in these stainless steel booms and making that cleanup a little bit easier. So again, with Liberty, they specifically say it's a triple rinse spray equipment cleaned with a commercial tank cleaner. Now it doesn't say a specific tank cleaner, but a commercial one before you attending another new application. Again, we'll make sure any rinsate or foam is removed from the spray tank and the boom. So any questions so far? I mean, as far as the Liberty and Roundup systems go, they're pretty straightforward. You know, it's not super complex. There's not a lot of things that they're telling you specific things about as far as any setbacks. It's still a fairly easy system to use. And we're going to kind of skip on now to talk about Extend. So Climate and Monsanto, they offered this up starting in 2016. And it's a great system using their formulation of dicamba that's supposed to be not as volatile. And it's slowly, the system's being released in. As of Friday, there's a new list that will show about some tank mix agents and chemicals that they've released, and also another spray list as far as spray tips. But in the very beginning, they only had 1 or 2 tips that they actually allowed you to use. But with Extend, it's only ground application. You can't use it aerially. Again, referencing back to the Roundup systems, you could use it very liberally with aerial or ground application. And they've specifically said you have to use a very coarse to an ultra coarse droplet. And in the very first literature, they talked about using a high pro ULD or a TTI induction nozzle. The high pro is one that we do offer, and it does a very nice job. Chris, do you have that tip?
Yep, I got one, the ultra low drifts on the boom. On
So
the boom up there, so
you'll
see them up there. They actually say ULD on the tip, but it is a fan style ultra low drift tip. I have some high flows up here and some extended range, and one of the twin airs. So if you want to see one of the ultra low drifts, we always pop one off the boom and show you.
So again, talking about each individual tip, there's not another label that talks about a specific tip that you have to use, and it can be an induction nozzle. So now ground speed, again, no more than 15 miles an hour. And again, when applying wind speed, and notice it's 3 to 10, so now it's even a little bit higher. And then again, spray buffers required if blowing towards a sensitive area. Then that sensitive area is coming to a play again. But we don't want 0. Again, this formulation tends to, if there's 0, it will move and drift. And we've seen evidence of it in the news in the Mid-South, with sensitive areas being like a peach grove, and that's still in litigation with some growers out there. So it's things you really have to worry about and pay attention to. This is the first time I've seen this. Maintain a boom height within 20 inches above the crop canopy. Most of the time they just say within reason of crop canopy. It's not a specific inch or anything like that, but they're very specific about application. So if you get out of compliance with this and things move, they're covered, but will you be if you don't do the proper techniques? And again, we're going to have to maintain a label buffer to protect sensitive areas. So this buffer actually can change with the time of day, the crop you're spraying, the crop that your neighbor has, wind direction, wind speed. So if you don't understand where you're going and how you're going to spray that, it could really affect how your end product is and where that spray goes. So you have to really know your system. And then again, you use a triple rinse tank cleanout procedure, and their procedure is specific to their formulation. Here's some of the literature that they put out as far as recommendations for their label requirements. Again, a low volatile formulation, and it's a very coarse droplet. And these first came out, and they've changed a couple of times. Actually, they updated it on Friday, but we'll kind of show you that. Again, here's the label for their maximizing on-target herbicide application. And they want that very coarse droplet, and here's the tips that they had approved and EPA had approved for their formulation. What's even more important, I think, is this tank mix and all the approvals that they are so far have. They don't have Roundup yet, but I think it's coming. But here again, so now to keep those modes of action available, we've got these Authority, RAL, Valor, and Warrant to do as a tank mix to help keep us from getting into a situation that we had before and losing that capability using the product. So now let's talk about cleanup. Has anybody going to use dicamba this year? We're going to put some dicamba beans out. So this, I think, is the most important part right here, because most of us aren't going to have 2 or 3 sprayers to use separately for each of our chemical applications. So when you go from one system to another, it's a very involved process, and if you don't take it seriously, it'll injure your crop and it could possibly injure your neighbor's crop. It's a 7-step process. And first, after spraying, immediately drain and rinse the system. Again, we'll flush the tank, hose boom ends, and nozzles with a clean water solution. So again, that boom end section right there, that's very important because the formulation of that dicamba will tend to not sludge, but it will build up in that end. And if you don't get it all out of there, it won't release immediately, but over time you're going to end up getting some out of that, and it will affect your next application. Third, you're going to rinse, prepare a cleaning solution. Again, they've talked about a specific ammonia-based commercial cleaner. Chris, we have a good tank cleaning agent.
Oh yeah, Deere offers a tank cleaner for the different applications. I also have the winterizing fluid like Roy mentioned earlier, and we also have the foam markers, different solutions for the foam markers, but Deere does offer a tank cleaning solution, yeah.
And then the next step would be to remove and soak all strainers, screens, and filters overnight is the best. So again, you've got to really think about when I get done at the end of the day, if I'm going to go somewhere else, then I need to clean all those out, let them sit overnight. It's time, it's effort. And next, we're going to fill the spraying tear with a cleaning solution, agitate at least for 15 minutes, and remove all the deposits. Flush hoses and lines again with the solution for 1 minute. And finally, repeat the above steps. So again, it takes time. This is not just a quick process. It's not just water. And you really have to be mindful of what you're doing. And this comes right from the label here. The importance of that rinseate, again, this is to cover them. And if you don't heed their warning, you could be liable for any off-target movement. And if you get it on your other farm or another cropping system, they're not going to be the ones to go back on it. Now, we're going to talk a little bit and let Chris talk now about some sprayer enhancements and some tools that we offer and that would help make cleaning and spraying solutions that much easier.
All right, so I'm going to ask a question when we started here, see how well everybody's listening. You ready? We got laughter already. That's not good. So, how many of you have different turrets on, like, you know what I mean by turrets, on your spray nozzles? Everybody here has 3 or 5 turret on their sprayers, right? How many of you have one spray tip on that turret? I've seen a few people, okay? I'm not saying anybody here, but I'm just saying I've seen a few. How many different spray tips should you need depending on what you're spraying? Can one spray tip do every chemical? No. So, with Deere, we offer the different spray tips for different applications. Now, obviously, how do you know what spray tip do you need? Well, that also depends on what your label says, what you're spraying, how fast you want to spray, what kind of droplet size you need, your pressures behind it. So there's a bunch of different variables that go through picking the right tip. The chart that he showed you that came in with your packet, it's a really handy chart. I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to hold that in your back pocket, though, are you? Every time you switch a chemical or whatever, you're thinking, what tip do I need? Well, John Deere thought about that because they said no one wants to handle that. They came out with the app that's on your phone now that you can get. So when you're looking at new chemicals or whatnot, you can download this app and find out exactly what spray tip do you need. And just to go through it real quick, we're going to pull it up on the screen that way you can kind of see what it looks like. It's actually called John Deere Nozzle Selector is what the actual app is. And when you open it up, it's going to come up to this screen here. You're going to choose what kind of spraying you're doing. Obviously, we're going to do broadcast because that's what most of us do here. And then it asks you tip spacing, speed, application rate, solution density, and droplet size. So the first screen we pulled up here was your tip spacing. Most of us are either 15 or 20. So we're going to do 20 in this slide here. And then your speed. Obviously, this goes up as fast as you want or as slow as you want. Most of everybody around here is probably going to do 12 or 13 mile an hour. So we're going to pick 12 for this. Application rate, we're going to leave it at 10. But you can choose whatever gallon per acre that you want to use for the certain tip that you're needing. Solution density, obviously where you're going to get that, you're going to get that off your label, depending on what what your density is going to be of the solution you're spraying. We're going to stick with water for this one. And droplet size, this is where label comes in again. They go all the way from extremely fine all the way up to extremely coarse. So in this, we're going to do the coarse, and then you're going to click Find My Product. This is going to pull up all the tips that Deere offers that fits your parameters that you set for this. So the first one up there is an ultra-low drift, and this is going to tell you what it's commonly used for, the flow rate, and what the application selection guide, the drift control, contact, different pressures. It'll show you exactly what you're going to get out of your different pressures. And it's going to tell you what kind of pattern it is, spray angle, and the pressure ranges. So this is a great tool to where if you're looking at the Extend or the Liberty Link or whatever else, and they give you a certain range they want you in, but then you got to decide what your speed's going to be, because there's some guys that like running the 15 mile an hour and there's some guys that like running the 8. Well, the same tip can't do 8 to 15 depending on droplet size. So this is a great tool, that way you can make sure that you have the correct tip for your application. We'll go ahead and go back to the slide here, and we're going to talk about the new Express Boom that Deere offers. The Express Boom, you have a little packet here that came in a little pamphlet, and it gives you some of the highlights of the Express Boom and tells you what the benefits are on it, and actually tells you what applications it can reference on it. Now if you look at the new R series, it comes with the stainless steel booms. Some of your 10, 20, 30, even 40 series sprayers still had the poly boom, the solution booms on them. You can update that now to the stainless, and it's called the Express Boom. Obviously, what's the benefits of having the Express Boom? Well, once you get the Express Boom, you're going to update it to the new stainless. You're going to get the multi-swivel assemblies, which is the 5 turret and also bodies on there. You're going to install the Express Boom end caps. That's going to be the new big thing for us. So obviously, like I said, you can get this for the 10, 20, 30, 40 series sprayers, even back to the 4700 sprayer to update this to the new stainless steel. Here's a picture showing you what it looks like and what you're going to get away from if you do have the poly on there. You see the sag there in the center? Who can tell me what the sag does to your boom spray nozzles? What's that going to hold in there? Bunch of solution, right? Whatever you're spraying out the butt, if it's sagging right there and you shut the sprayer off, where's that going to settle at? Right there. So no matter what you do, every time you clean that out, you're always going to have settling right there in that sag. The stainless obviously is going to eliminate that sag. The other big thing about this, depending on what spacing you're on, you can change it. So if you're on 15, you said, oh, I really want to go to 20. Well, if you get the Express Boom, you can do that now. So you can go from the 15 to 20, and then if you're 20, you want to go 15, you go 20 to 15. Obviously, once you get installed, you cannot go back and forth, because then you'll have holes everywhere and spraying out a different solution. That's not going to work for you. So it is a one-time shop, but you can change it depending on what your application is. The new big thing Deere came out with is the Express Nozzle Body End Cap. You heard the word clean out, and a lot of this chemicals nowadays is huge on clean out. But that's just one of the benefits of the Express Boom Cap. How many of you, when you're spraying and you shut off at the end, does that boom immediately shut off? No, if you shut that thing off, it's going to run another 60 foot or so and still spraying, and not full rate, but you're still going to be spraying a little bit. Well, if you're changing field to field, you could destroy the neighbor's field or wherever else. These Express Boom caps, end caps, help release the trapped air that's inside your system. It goes back through the nozzle body there, and it goes on every boom section. That way the air that's trapped in there, it can release quicker, so you have not the immediate shut-off, but you will have not such a lag in shut-off, okay? The other nice thing about the Express Boom end caps is at the end is a quick release. So when you're looking at it, you can actually get in there and clean all that gunk out. Before, if you look at the booms, it's extremely hard. You got to take apart a bunch of pieces and get that cleaned out. But now it's just one quick pin, take that out, and you can clean it. The other thing to do with the application rates and everything else with your spray tips is Deere teamed up with a company called Spot On, and they came out with this little device here. I had one of the service techs ask me yesterday, why can't I just use a measuring cup and a stopwatch? Well, because that involves math, and no one really likes to do math. This little device here is actually going to help you in the field when your spray tips. This is going to help you determine if your spray tips need replacing or not. Nothing's worse than when you're out there thinking you're spraying the application rate and you're either doubling it or you're not getting enough on. This little device here, you can put it underneath the spray tip, and it actually tell you the gallons per minute that you're putting out through that spray tip. There's a little short video here that tells you a little more how that actually works, and we'll get that played for you here, hopefully.
The Spot-On Sprayer Calibrator is a handheld electronic meter for measuring spray nozzle flow rates. With this meter, you can quickly and accurately determine true nozzle flow rate in 10 seconds or less. This patent-pending meter comes in two sizes: the model SC1 for herbicide and insecticide nozzles with flow rates up to 1 gallon per minute, and the model SC4 for liquid fertilizer and higher flow nozzles with rates up to 4 gallons per minute. Designed without any moving parts, the meter simply measures the time it takes to fill from the lower sensor to the upper sensor. Factory calibration lasts for the lifetime of the meter. Measurements can be made in gallons, ounces, or liters per minute. The selected unit of measure is displayed as the meter is turned on. Our demo is with the number 3 nozzle running at 40 psi and features the model SC1 with plus and minus 2.5% accuracy. The Spot-On Sprayer Calibrator is very easy to use. Just turn it on, wait for dashes on the display, then place it under the nozzle's flow until the flow rate is displayed. When done, simply empty the meter to prepare for another reading. For best results, hold the meter steady and at a slight angle while it fills. Designed for years of rugged use, the Spot-On Sprayer Calibrator is an essential tool for today's applicators who must check for nozzle wear and verify application rates.
So there you go. If you actually want to see it and handle it, that's no problem. We have one up here for you guys to come up here and try out for yourself if you would do like to try it.
The Spot-On's it's a great little tool. Again, it's one of those things you can just put in your pocket and keep with you. You may not use it every day, but you'll use it more often than you think. Again, we'll kind of recap what we talked about. Roundup 1, Roundup 2 systems are a great system, but unfortunately, as a farming country and community, we've abused the system, and now we've got to come up with something else that can help us be good stewards and the farming practices that we want to perform to keep our weeds out. We've got to think differently, and the systems that they're bringing are making us be more steward-minded in how we approach those. So keep that in mind. This time next year, it'll be interesting to see what the world looks like after a year in the Midwest with the Extend system, and hopefully we learn and we all grow from it. Thank you.
Up now, I'd like to introduce Travis Harrison with the 360 Yield Center. He'll be doing a little presentation on some of the benefits of later season application and some of the products that they have to offer. So, there you go.
All right, thanks, Sam. So how many guys, while they're getting the presentation pulled up, how many have Y drops or have seen Y drops or had any trial data shown about Y drops? Nobody? Okay, well, we're going to start educating. So you have heard about 360 Yield Center, right? Prior to me showing up today? Okay. So as Sam mentioned, my name is Travis Harrison, Region Manager with 360 Yield Center. So just kind of want to talk about some different nitrogen methods here. Right here behind me is a nitrogen uptake curve for corn. You guys have probably seen this at numerous seed meetings you've been at, numerous journals over the last 2-3 years. The big takeaway from this is we spend a lot of time here by V6 determining what type of yield we're going to have. And more often than not, we determine it by For the last 5, 10, 15 years, I've always applied 200 pounds of nitrogen, or my soil test tells me I have this many pounds of nitrogen. I want this yield, this is what I apply. However, the corn plant only uses about 5% of its nitrogen up to V6, 25% nitrogen up to V10, right here. So there is a long window between when we plant that crop to when that crop really starts to take in account for nitrogen. So why is that so important? Weather is a big deal. So we are catching more 3, 4, 5-inch rainfall events. Years are changing. Right now it's starting out very eerily similar to 2012. Do we know what type of growing season, what type of year we're going to have in 17? It could change in April and get cool, then wet all summer long. Could be hot and dry. We don't really understand. So if we can delay timing and understand more what's going on throughout the year and say, all right, we have 100 bushel potential on this ground, or I have optimum conditions out here, I got 240 bushel corn out here. Let's feed that plant, feed that crop, get it really moving. So the point being is a lot of nitrogen is taking up. So we have a lot of time to delay when we make that ultimate decision. We have to have a base out there to start the program, 60 to 100, 110 pounds, but then delay that further application later on. So 75% is needed after V10, and then 60% of nitrogen is obtained within 7 inches of where that seedling is placed when you plant it. 60%. So roots do grow as wide as the leaves do, and as deep in the ground as the plant is tall, but vast majority of that root system stays within that 6-inch flower plot there. So if we can place nitrogen and the plant doesn't have to stress and go as far to find that, it can improve that efficiency and uptake from it. So many of us probably analyze our crop based on how much nitrogen it takes from a nitrogen use efficiency. The best one I've heard so far is a grower out in Nebraska I work with that he is at a 0.43. 0.43 pounds of applied nitrogen for every bushel. Think about your guys' operation. If you could get down to a 0.43 pounds of applied nitrogen, not saying that is sustainable long term, but it is an option with understanding what's going on in the year and stuff. So Y-drops will place that nitrogen within 2 to 3 inches from the stalk place, so this puts it in 80% of the root mass right in that application zone. This was a trial from 2015, so this was an extremely, extremely wet year. So this was in central Illinois, splitting out the field across there. On 5, plot 5 was 200 pounds of anhydrous spring applied, did 97. Right next to it was plot 4 that had 70 pounds put on in a 2x2 on the planter, followed by 130 pounds put on at V12. Almost 60 bushel difference there by delaying. That was a highly leachable year. Fast forward to 2016, we had a very efficient year. So at 360, we had many trials across the country that we did replications. Out of those 9 trials, we saved 26 pounds of nitrogen average and yielded 8 bushel more in a side-by-side comparison by understanding what's going on out there. So it is an input-output efficiency. Great mineralization year in 2016 as opposed to 2015 as leachable as it was. 2017, I don't know what it's going to bring. We can take a guess. But unfortunately, none of us in this room know exactly what 2017 is going to bring. If you guys do, you're in the wrong business. So there's a lot of risk, and we have to understand more what's going on. So this was side dressed here at 40 inches, planted to triticale, and it shows exactly where that nitrogen band moves. So we've always thought historically that nitrogen moves horizontally in the soil. However, the truth is it moves very, very narrowly, about 6 inches side to side. And then it moves down from there. So think about if you had corn planted in there and you're side dressing away from the row, the vast majority of that nitrogen could potentially move down and not where the plant gets it, especially if we catch a 3, 4, 5 inch rainfall. We got tile right there, it could end up in the creeks, the waterways, and then we applied a lot of nitrogen for nothing, unfortunately. So if we can put that band right next to that plant, can improve that efficiency and improve that uptake from there. So, traceable nuclear N. How many guys have heard of this in here? I'm not going to bore you with the chemistry behind it, but basically what traceable nuclear N is, it's a gene we put in to the nitrogen that then we can run it through the lab and we can trace exactly where that nitrogen ends up. So a lot of universities, a lot of FSA, NRCS is doing a lot of work with nuclear N on a tile outlet standpoint. When we talk a lot about leaching and how much nitrogen's ended up in the Gulf of Mexico, watching waterways. So what we did, it was on a Y-drop application. So this field was replicated multiple times across there. All this data was aggregated here, and this was the average of it. So base rate was 100 pounds evenly spread across the field, all across there. The next one was Y-drop applied at V8. So you're talking about waist-high corn or so roughly. 100 pounds. The nuclear N was placed in there. Plants were then chopped off once it hit black layer at the soil, sent into the lab for analysis. 25 pounds of that nuclear N was in the grain, 15 pounds was in the stover, so 40% of that nuclear N ended up in the plant stock. So the key being there was probably more of that in the root mass, but we did not dig up all the root mass to see exactly what was in there. We just took from the top of the plant, see what ended up in there. Y-drop single hose. Many times we get a lot of questions, like last week at Louisville is, all right, all I want to do is an every other row standpoint. You're placing it right next to the plant, I want to do an every other row. So we replicated that. 36 pounds ended up there as opposed to 40. 11% difference. About 3 bushel difference in this scenario averaged out between an every row Y-drop application as opposed to an every other row. Center row Coulter. 32 pounds of that nuclear N ended up in there. Same V8 application. 25% hit or 8 bushel difference between the Y-drop as opposed to the Coulter application on a yield basis. So then this is what it kind of looks like. So 60 pounds was left in the soil, 25, 15. Y-drop, 68, 19, and 13 ended up there on the Coulter bar there on the right. So we are going to do more and more work with this on universities and see exactly how much we can get in efficiency improved. So let's look at some payback scenarios and see how quickly technology like this can pay back, because on razor thin margins it's all about payback and how quickly can we return on my investment and is it profitable. So Coulter bar, 28 bars. How many guys have 28 bars in here? All right, a few of you. So in this example, this is a 40-foot bar, 17 Coulters. $400 is the average I came up with when I went out to a lot of different websites and looked to see what that would cost from the Coulter assembly. So $400 there, $6,800 investment if you were to rebuild that bar ground up. Y-drop side dress. So we can mount Y-drop side dress on a side dress bar as opposed to that Coulter. So $450 price on that. So about $7,650 investment, so $850 more. Or a 60-foot bar is $10,350. Yield bushel gain. That 5 bushel is the average of all the wind field data, all their research trials across the country, all the Beck's PFR data, all the data we've done at 360, all of that aggregated together came up with 5 bushels as an average. 1,000 acres of corn, 5 bushel net, $3.75 market price. Net profit on 1,000 acres after covering that investment is $11,100 back in the pocket. So technology like this can quickly pay for itself by placing that and improving that nitrogen efficiency. Every year are you going to see 5 bushel? No. Some years you might see 0, some years you might see 3. It just depends on what the growing season is. Other years you might see more than that. So on average it can quickly pay back. Now what about if we invest in a 60-foot system on a self-propelled sprayer, whether it's a Hagie, John Deere R-Series, 47, 48, 30, etc. $16,445 is the price for a 60-foot Y-drop system mounted on a sprayer. 7 bushels. The advantage, all that data summarized with that wider application window getting later. So 28 bars. You can go out to chest-high corn with an 8R tractor because you're not ground engaging now. self-propelled sprayer, you can go out there at fully tasseled corn if you want and put wide drop on there. So getting that improved efficiency when the plant's using it. $9,805 on 1,000 acres of corn. So the point being, technology like this can quickly pay back for itself. And then there's how it mounts on there on the side dress bar. So the other product is the 360 undercover product. So what that undercover product is, it has directional nozzles underneath there that really creates this dense fog right here. So this is 35 pounds of pressure right there, really getting a improved coverage top to bottom. Corn car wash is a lot of what I like to talk about. So it really covers that plant top to bottom, improves that coverage of that fungicide or insecticide, foliar fed micronutrient we're going after. So I only have a few words on this slide here that says, if you touch it, you kill it. Any guesses what I mean by that? Say that one more time. Exactly. So he said that anything from the chemical that hits the target you're going after, so if it's a disease pressure or an insecticide that you're going after, that's where it stops working at. So he is correct. So many of the labels we look at, over 60% of the fungicide and insecticide labels on the market are contact killing, meaning where they land on the plant, that's where they stay. The other 40% that are move within the plant can take 3 to 5 days before it is fully moved in that plant. So if you have a large insect infestation, if you have heavy disease pressure and you miss the application by 2-3 days, another 3 to 5 days can go by, and then your yield can drastically go down. So the undercover product really gets that coverage top to bottom. So wide drop we can mount out to the first fold. The undercover on the Hagees and the R series we can mount out the full boom, whether that's a 90-foot, 100-foot, 120-foot system, so we are not limited to capacity from there. So what does that look like from a coverage standpoint? So this isn't a soybean crop, 12 inches down on the stem, there with an over-the-top application, twin tips, front to back, 12 inches down in the canopy, and bottom of the leaf, top versus bottom. This was over the top application here. The undercover application, look at how much better coverage we got there on the bottom side of the leaves. The bottom side of the leaf is extremely important when we think of spider mites, soybean aphids, Asian rust, southern rust, you name it. Many of those diseases work from the ground up or they reside on the bottom side of the leaf. So if we can get that coverage and really stop that disease or that insecticide pressure we have going on there, it can definitely stop that source right away and we are drastically improved. I don't have the slide in this deck, but last year there was a guy out in Delmarva, Delaware, that sprayed the center of his pivot with his 4730 with the undercover technology and then called in the airplane to do the rest of the field, which was about half. It cost him 35 bushel because he had such a heavy pressure of southern rust going on. He was pretty mad at himself that he didn't stay in the seat of the sprayer and finish out the rest of his fields when it cost him that much. So Winfield, they invest $25 million every year. Last year they seen a 3 bushel advantage as in over the top ground application versus the undercover technology all averaged out. And that was research sites all across the country from what Winfield's seen. So the other products we have from 360, we have a soil scan machine that if you guys have any questions over there that tests nitrate in the soil. We have 14-inch bullet ripper points, yield saver gathering chains, chain roll stock rolls, and then an anhydrous Equiflow solution. So if you guys have any questions on them, we can definitely answer those or talk about them. Otherwise, I think we're getting pretty close to lunch. So I do appreciate everyone's time here this morning.